The DCAU owes a great deal of its popularity and success to its positive relationship with the comic books. So much so that it's a unidirectional relationship. So it's no surprise that once again the comic book talent crosses over to write one of the episodes. In this case, Gail Simone. As you can imagine from someone who made a huge contribution to Deadpool's success, this episode is frequently very funny, as we get from the start with the discussion between two mob goons. I'm not quoting it because if I quoted every good part, I would just be showing you the episode. They're quickly down for the count because of Huntress, and it's no surprise why she's here. One of Simone's most famous runs was on Birds of Prey, and she was the one who added Huntress to Barbara Gordon and Black Canary on that team. In fact, this was supposed to be a Birds of Prey episode, but thanks to what is called the Bat embargo, that limited what Batman-related characters could be used, they were barely able to get away with the Clock King in Task Force X, never mind Batgirl, so she was out, which kind of pulled the pin on a Birds of Prey story. So, having the story thoroughly trashed right out the door, Simone just rolled with the punches and put out a different brilliant story, because the thrust of it is really about character. And I'll obviously get into that more as we go on. As you no doubt have noticed along the way, Huntress has been breaking into the place. Well, she's not here on superhero business. This is personal. This is the home of the mobster, Mandragora, who had killed her father, and she's here for revenge.
All these years you've been building your empire with thievery and murder. But it ends tonight.
And now... No, a few more. Well, it turns out the guy's not even there. She just murdered a whole bunch of pillows. And before she knows what's up, John beams her up to the watchtower. He's steamed because she was told specifically to stay away from Mandragora, so trying to murder him in his sleep was definitely off the table. And in the larger sense, it definitely wouldn't help the view that the JLU is an out-of-control threat if its members were going around murdering people to settle personal scores. In light of this, Huntress is canned. She's sent off to go collect her stuff, but she is steamed over this whole mess. Not only did they stop her tonight, but Mandragora is now under their protection. She's not going to be able to find him very easily. Well, luckily across the hall is everyone's favorite Fox Mulder by way of a beautiful mind, the Question. Back in the Doomsday Sanction, Batman said he put the Question in charge of finding a connection between Lex Luthor and Cadmus. There were many groans around the table, but it is admitted that if anyone can find a connection, the Question can. Whether it's a real connection or not is a whole nother matter.
Wow. I had no idea that the Girl Scouts were responsible for the crop circle phenomenon.
Oh, so you're covering up for the fact that it's the Justice League that's responsible. I saw Task Force X. You become a tool of the man, Question.
Well, I have a question for you then. Do you know what apophenia is?
Apophenia, noun. The tendency to see connections where none exist.
You joke. Of course you know why it's in here, right? Because apophenia would work as a characteristic for My Little Pony, right? You could completely see apophenia on there. This little conspiracy-loving pony whose cutie mark is an apple with a question mark on it. Tell me you can't picture that, huh? Yeah, it was all a plot by Gail Simone in order to get a lucrative TV job for Lorne Faust, huh? Yeah, they can't fool me. Now, sure, you might skeptically say, but that show didn't come out until 5 years later. How would Simone make such a plan work? To which I say, how indeed? Few even think to ask the question. Well, Huntress obviously came in here to get information about Mandragora, and so she's offering up info on Cadmus. As you've noticed, we've already cut over to see what the sleazeball is getting up to, under the protection of both the government and Green Arrow and Black Canary. He's going to be testifying against a whole bunch of bad guys. That doesn't stop him from being a prick, though, and Arrow gets annoyed at a few comments made about Black Canary, until he wants to, well, just beat up the guy. Well, Canary is above that kind of thing and ignores what he says, until Mandragora asks whether she settled for the loser because all the real men in the league were already taken. Then she punches him. In her defense, though, some people just need to be punched, hard and often. Obviously, this is the first character dynamic on display. Arrow and Canary's previously developed relationship has made each one protective of the other. Canary especially does not wish to appear weak, shown not only by her refusal to give Mandragora the satisfaction of taking umbrage at his remarks about her, but also not wanting Arrow to look at her injured hand after punching said dickhead. But clearly that's an instinctive response to that desire. Once she recalls who this really is, she can allow herself to be a mere mortal in front of Arrow while knowing that it won't affect his respect for her. She's willing to then let him take a look at it. And that's what love is at its best. Someone who makes you stronger than you thought you could be, yet someone you can show how weak you sometimes feel without any fear of the consequences. The night takes a turn for the awkward when the Question and Huntress arrive stealthily, only for Arrow and Canary to have seen them coming from up in their treehouse. It's always the treehouses that do superheroes in. Huntress won't let beating the shit out of someone stop her from revenge, so she attacks Canary, and the Question quickly follows by attacking Arrow, who's more confused than anything by that. I mean, granted, Arrow is a dyed-in-the-wool lefty, and Question is a conspiracy freak. A fight between those kinds of people is kind of inevitable. But it's not like this treehouse is in front of Area 51 here, and Question's superpowers consist entirely of obsessive-compulsive disorder and owns a hat. So it doesn't seem to me that he has a reason to go picking a fight with Arrow. Round 1 goes to the team with colors in their name, but it's moot since during a distraction Mandragora gets away. No, a different distraction besides 4 superheroes fighting on the front lawn. That's old hat in this town. The Question tricks the other 2 into thinking that a key to a storage locker is a clue, when in reality it's a list of arriving shipping containers. Arrow is the one that immediately sees through the deception, since Canary is used to grand superhero stuff, while Arrow's used to dealing with the problems of the little guy, and all the con jobs that might involve. It shows again how these 2 complement each other. Canary is more of the powerhouse, while Arrow is more of the street smarts. On their way to the docks, the Question reveals that he knew Huntress knew nothing about Cadmus, and also that he knows about her backstory, how Mandragora used to work for her father, a mobster, until he murdered her family and took over. That's what the revenge is all about.
So why help me?
That is the question.
I thought it was to be or not to be. But no more time for that, it's time for the car chase, which is mostly about Green Arrow having a very bad time, and also about a large train. Casualty, 1 motorcycle. But they're still tailing Huntress in Question, who suspects that he knows what ship Mandragora has come to meet. So at the moment he shows his big head, the couple then leap into action first. And even Canary's scream is not enough to put this guy down. So with the other 3 heroes down for the count, that just leaves Huntress, with her incredibly lethal bolts to finally get her revenge. That's when the cargo arrives, Mandragora's young son, who had been kidnapped by a rival group of criminals. But she's not going to let a touching reunion get in the way of her vengeance. But the Question intervenes to talk her out of it, but in the only way that he possibly could.
Huntress, is this really what you want?
No.
The Question had figured out everything ahead of time. Mandragora's escape plan, picking up his son, playing the feds, plotting to disappear forever. That's why he was here, because this was the last night Huntress could get what she needed. Not revenge, but closure. That's what her character journey was about, to find that without resorting to being a killer. And as far as the Question goes, the answer to why he came along, risked his life, even fought Ollie, he did all of this because he does care about Huntress. And this was the only way that he could help her find what she was looking for. But he knew she had to be the one to find it. He didn't lecture her. He didn't try to play her. She needed to discover what that answer was. So what he did was simply provide the question. This isn't directly related to the Cadmus arc, but it puts a new element into that story, this growing relationship now between the Question and Huntress, given how he's the one who is investigating the Cadmus issue. But regardless of its connection to the series, this episode is great. It's smart, witty, has good character, superb voice acting, and the direction is fantastic. Double Date is an outstanding example of how story and action can mesh very well, even in the limited time frame of a half-hour animated show. It's hard to believe that this is the consequence of business suits getting in the way, because it's a real standout episode, and showcases once again how Justice League Unlimited was able to take characters who were unlikely to be seen as capable of carrying an animated show, and giving them a chance to come alive on the small screen, to be opened up to a young generation who otherwise might not have known about them. I can't help but wonder how much this exposure might have helped contribute to the success that Arrow would eventually see, which of course was the first step in bringing a live-action DC universe onto television.
All hail the Overlord! All hail the Overlord!
Lose them.
Like airline luggage.